All right, so this evening, I rise to fulfill the last task that Presley Stutz ever asked me to do, actually. The day that he tested positive, he told me to get busy. I can't tell you how many hours I have put into this. What you see is simply a motion to censure. This is 5 pages. The full one that I am submitting to the committees, I'm submitting to the Resolutions Committee, the Rules Committee, the Reorg Committee, and the 2021 Precinct Reorg Subcommittee, is actually 33 pages plus about 32 to 34 pieces of evidence. 38? Okay. Okay. But anyway, this is the motion to censure itself. All of the documentation that goes with it is going to the committees, and then when they come out of committee, then we will find out, exactly how this will read. So this is just what's being introduced today. Therefore, be it known to all men that the Greenville County Republican Party, aka GCGOP of South Carolina, does hereby censure former chairman Mr. Nathan Loip on grounds of misconduct in office, abuse of power, and mismanagement of funds. Mr. Loip broke 6 South Carolina Republican Party rules and 7 Greenville County Republican Party rules while serving as the chairman of the Greenville County Republican Party during the course of the 2021 statutorily required Greenville County reorganization process. Mr. Loip has been intentionally violating South Carolina Republican Party, aka SCGOP rules 4.5C and 2A, along with GCGOP rules 2B and 2C for 4 years by withholding complete certified lists of delegates and alternates by withholding the complete certified list of delegates and alternates that is to be made available per SCGOP rules. As Mr. Loip admitted, this list is intended to be used for campaigning. These lists are also typically used to further Republican causes in general. And the missing information from these lists was 200 emails, or 15% of the whole, 1,499 addresses, 100% of the whole, approximately 165 phone numbers, or 11% of the whole. Interestingly, I looked at my list. On my list, I was actually missing 240 phone numbers, so we received different lists. We had no contact information on 155 delegates and alternates, and there were 3 delegates that did not make this list at all. Other than addresses, all missing information is pertaining directly to those who signed up during the interim period by agents of the party per the special committee's report. In addition, Mr. Loip provided the complete list to at least one candidate with sufficient time to prepare and send out a mailer. Thus, Mr. Loip showed favoritism to some and hindered other candidates from being able to effectively campaign, which violates GCGOP Rule 4D, regarding favoritism and the responsibility of the party to make all resources available equally. Finally, while arguing that he is concerned about the privacy of the delegates, Mr. Loip emailed 1,499 people the personal emails and phone numbers of each and every legitimate delegate, while Mr. Loip sought to withhold the personal information of the improperly credentialed delegates with much success. Mr. Loip further admitted he broke these rules, stating, "I agree, the contact information issue is bad. That rule was violated." This page, sorry. Also during the 2021 reorganization cycle, Mr. Loip intentionally violated SCGOP Rule 4A2, 4C through 1, 4C5, 4C8, and 4B2, along with GCGOP Rule 6B and the 2021 reorganization training, by usurping the authority of the county's precinct voters, precinct president, precinct secretaries, and the 3rd vice chair, his automatic reorganization designee. Per these rules, the purpose of the makeup meeting is for the organized precinct members to come together to elect any unfilled positions. The chairman's only job is to set the date and location for the makeup meeting. Each precinct president has full authority over their own precinct to call the meetings to order. Anyone wishing to run for an office, including delegate or alternate, is then voted on, including those who have filled out their Form 1s prior to the meeting. After the election, the president and secretary certify the election. The certified paperwork would then be submitted to the GCGOP 3rd vice chair, who manages the county reorganization process, and clearly, with many emails and training, sought to do an excellent job. Unorganized precincts do not participate in reorganization. Nowhere in this process does the chairman have the authority to turn precinct voters into delegates, prevent precinct members from attending the makeup meeting, tell volunteers to call precinct meetings to order, or certify the election of precinct delegates. Unfortunately, Mr. Loip abused the power of his position and fraudulently certified delegates who had not been elected during the interim period. When legitimate delegate candidates arrived to be elected at the makeup meeting, they were told that the elected slots had been filled. In fact, that wasn't true. All those who showed up for the makeup meeting should have been presented with both their own Form 1s as well as the Form 1s of any voters signed up during the interim period. That group of present precinct voters at the makeup meeting would then have voted for as many delegate slots as were available to be filled, and everyone who attended the makeup meeting likely would have been elected. Instead, the people who were signed up during the interim period stole the available slots under the direction of Mr. Loip. This is the very definition of a stolen election. Now, I wish you could see this. I made a little pretty thing that I guess when it comes out eventually, you'll see it. So on March 22nd of this year, 877 delegates and 20 alternates were duly elected to their positions. There's no question about that. Between that time and the makeup meeting, agents of the party, some of them paid, signed up 337 delegates and 48 alternates for 385 total. Make a note that only 25 of those actually paid their $20 fee, which according to everything we were told meant they were not able to participate or be running in anything for an office of delegate or alternate. So they were not legitimate delegates and alternates, okay? They were not elected. Then on April 6, 2021, 173 delegates and 44 alternates were certified to be delegates and alternates. Now, if you'll remember, we received an email that said ECs and presidents or anybody that attended the first reorg were not allowed to attend the second reorg. Well, your president in your precinct is the only one who is able to call your precinct meeting to order, and your president and your secretary certify the election after all of you who showed up to vote have your election process, right? All right. Additionally, Mr. Loip fully understood these rules and intentionally broke them. Prior to the first reorganization meeting, presidents and ECs received an email stating, pre-registrations. Nate will notify ECs and presidents on Monday if your precinct has had any pre-registrations and if they are interested in running for the office of delegate in absentia. Mr. Loip further indicated his awareness of these rules when he sent out an email on May 6, 2021, partially quoting the SCGOP rules stating, delegates and alternates to the county convention shall be elected from among the members of the precinct. This was intentional noncompliance with the rules under the leadership of Mr. Loip, Chairman Loip, excuse me. Furthermore, Mr. Loip intentionally violated SCGOP Rule 4C5 and GCGOP Rules 2C, 4A5, 2B, and the 2021 reorganization training as given in both written format by the third vice chair, as well as in training received by the precinct presidents and ECs in which Mr. Loip fully participated. Such integral participation indicated not only Mr. Loip's understanding of these rules, but also his leadership in creating those rules for the 2021 reorganization cycle. As found by a special committee, and mostly admitted by Mr. Loip himself, the rules were breached by hindering the required personal information and legibility requirements of the Form 1s. He did this in two ways, directing that 237 of the Form 1s be incorrectly filled out in order to avoid the reporting requirement of the SCGOP regarding having their own contact information on the certified delegate list. I just want to know, do any of you believe that if the information is written on the other side of the Form 1, that means that the party doesn't know it? Just thought I'd ask. All right. And the other way was by directing that 356 Form 1s be irreparably damaged beyond recovery, i.e., redacted in black in the financial section and admitting it was to hide evidence from the special committee. All right. He also breached the rules by directing and arranging payment for agents of the party, including SCGOP Field Director LaDonna Riggs, to solicit and sign up voters in conjunction with the SCGOP outside of the required in-person reorganization meetings. Directing agents of the party to sign up people without collecting the required convention fees, leaving the county party treasury $7,200 short. Directing that 360 unpaid delegate candidates be credentialed as delegates and alternates when the 2021 rules clearly stated that if you did not pay your fees, you would not be attending convention. Directing that unpaid, uncredentialed delegate candidates be used to block precinct voters who sought out the party to participate in this year's makeup election. Directing that solicited voters be told they didn't have to show up for either reorganization or the makeup meeting. Some of them didn't even have to fill out their own Form 1s. Someone else would pay their required $20 fee for them. Now, please note that only the people who were sought out by the agents of the party and signed up outside of reorganization, outside of the meetings for reorganization, received this option. They didn't even have to show up for the traditional half-day convention. All they had to do was log into their emails between 7 and 9 p.m. on the convention evening and vote for whom they were told to vote for. To make matters worse, Mr. Loip intentionally violated GCGOP Rule 4A5 regarding keeping all appropriate records of the party in duplicate. Mr. Loip also violated SCGOP Rule 2A and GCGOP Rule 2B that states all records and lists required by the rules shall be in writing. Not only did Mr. Loip fail to turn over all appropriate records to the newly elected chair, but his entire board also neglected to turn over their records to the subsequent board of the party. Not a single member of Mr. Loip's board upheld GCGOP Rule 4A5. The approved members of the next board, who were mentored by Mr. Loip, also neglected to turn over what records they did receive after they resigned, indicating that this rule was broken under the direction of Mr. Loip. 30 years of records in all formats, as well as club supplies, are missing. To make matters worse, Mr. Loip either did not create a budget or per GCGOP Rule 9C or failed to turn that over as well. The treasurer didn't even turn over the bank statements of recent years, much less the 30 years of history he possessed. Likewise, Mr. Loip intentionally violated GCGOP Rule 9D regarding limits of discretionary spending. Mr. Loip is allotted the lesser of $1,000 or 10% of the approved budget for discretionary spending. Nevertheless, the spending that is clearly outside of the budget is as follows. The treasury that was turned over to the new leadership was therefore missing approximately $7,200 in delegate and alternate fees. Mr. Loip had also spent $2,500 on a financial audit that was not due to be done again until 2023. Another $750 was spent on something else financial that was unexplained. Additionally, Mr. Loip's unfair reorganization practices apparently warranted spending an extra $480 on security for the makeup meeting to hire 4 extra police officers. $9,124 was spent on a dinner to celebrate the outgoing leadership and the ECs who would no longer be holding a leadership position in the GCGOP as a natural result of reorganization. Then, somehow, the $500 a month rent doubled in January, but wasn't noticed until April when an additional $2,000 was sent to the landlord, who happens to be a friend of Mr. Loip's. Mr. Loip left just $12,115 in the treasury. Most people would consider this irresponsible spending to be the draining of the coffers. It's worth noting that Mr. Loip never issued a bill to the SCGOP for the unpaid delegate and alternate fees. The treasurer never reported an IOU to the ECs at the June 7, 2021 EC meeting. In an attempt to cover up the missing money, Mr. Loip had the SCGOP very quickly issue a $7,200 check for the amount that was discovered to be missing after the next group took office, right? Mr. Loip failed to turn over the $2,000 election runner system paid for by the GCGOP. He failed to turn over the $2,500 2019-2020 audit paid for by the GCGOP. And he either failed to turn over, and I'm a little unclear as to what we actually got. I'm thinking maybe we received the $750 financial statement, but we either did not receive that or we didn't receive the $2,500 audit that was done for January, February, and March of this year. And failing to honor the discretionary spending budget of up to $1,000, Mr. Loip didn't hold back. There's a little wiggle room for the officers to approve specific expenditures. But if the officers approved $15,000 above the budgeted amount in unnecessary and unjustifiable spending, as appears to be the case, then they are also guilty of mismanagement of funds. The $9,000 going away dinner at the Poinsett Club was 9 times the chairman's yearly discretionary spending. And if you recall, when we have Christmas parties, they're potlucks, okay? Adding insult to injury, Mr. Loip engaged in a smear campaign against the elected members of the Greenville County Republican Party, as well as against the 2021 Reorganization Special Committee that was selected to audit the 2021 reorganization process. Mr. Loip used both his 4th District Director SCGOP email, as well as his very public social media accounts with the 4th District logo on it, to engage in this smear campaign against one of the county parties that he is elected to represent as the 4th District Director. Due to Mr. Loip's propensity for breaking rules, abuse of power, and mismanagement of funds, the Greenville County Republican Party has a moral and ethical obligation to censor Mr. Nathan Loip. The Greenville County Republican Party also wishes to express its grave concern about Mr. Loip's ability to either represent their members to the South Carolina Republican Party or to run a fair election in the 4th District, and would like to officially request that Mr. Loip resign from that position or be removed by the SCGOP. Please note that this is just a first draft, and to share relevant information with the committees that will be reviewing and updating this resolution, you will want to send them to either the chair of the Resolutions Committee, the Rules Committee, the Reorg Committee, or the 2021 Precinct Reorg Subcommittee, and that would be me. Thank you so much. I'm Elizabeth Scott. Have a nice night.